this is one that has been bugging me like you wouldn't believe for a really long time. We have talked a lot, guys, about the Letitia James case against one Donald Trump. And we've talked about how ridiculous, it absolutely was ridiculous to think that she was going after him for a private transaction. When I say a private transaction, he borrowed money from Deutsche Bank, and he borrowed it based with the collateral of Mar-a-Lago. And she's trying to say Mar-a-Lago was only worth like 18 million, whereas he had a much higher valuation. I think he would allege it's at least worth like 25 times that. Just look at what properties there in that market have sold for. So who is Letitia James to decide the value of one Mar-a-Lago? So the whole case was fundamentally flawed right from the get-go. That was really, really understood. It was the one case that really bugged me even more than the others because, you know, I'm a business reporter by background, and I just really thought this one was out over its skis. Well, here's the thing. Like, you know, we're still waiting. This article is from a couple of weeks ago. Trump's still waiting on ruling for $454 million, which is now over 500. Appeal sparking debate. Politics is interfering. You better believe politics is interfering, because I'll tell you, this thing should have taken 30 days, okay? 30 days to appeal this. I played for you all the sound bites. I'm going to play some of them again because you should know that the judges, they don't agree with this. Not in any way, shape, or form. In fact, you know, poor Judith Vale, who had to argue the case for Letitia James, because at the appellate court, you actually need smarter lawyers, less political, that maybe sort of know the law. But anyway, she gets up there, and they're shooting her down before she gets 2 words out of her mouth. Take a peek.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated—
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Boom, right? Okay, boom. So that's kind of all you need to know. There's the headline right there. They don't like the case. They think it's absolutely ridiculous. But if you don't take my word for it, I mean, this one judge, Judge Friedman, who actually, by the way, is about to retire soon, and some people are speculating that there might be one other judge who kind of runs the show over there and got appointed by Kathy Hochul, and is said to be a very political animal and may actually be doing this deliberately, holding this up. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It should take 30 days, and we're looking at over 300. It really doesn't make any sense. Anyway, this one judge is like, come on, lady. Like, you don't have any other cases like this. This makes no sense, and it really speaks to an attorney general that is way out over her skis with some kind of mission creep here. I want you to see it.
You're pointing to Ernst & Young. You're pointing to First American. Ernst & Young, you're dealing with the collapse of Lehman Brothers. First American, you're dealing with an action brought against an appraiser who overvalued properties at the behest of a lender perpetrating a scheme to induce unsophisticated consumers into taking out home loans that they could not afford. It hardly seems that justifies bringing an action to protect Deutsche Bank against President Trump, which is what you have here. I mean, you've got 2 really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money. And that was the point of my initial question. Every case that you cite involved where there was damage to consumers, damage to the marketplace. You've got a scheme to get unsophisticated consumers to take out home loans. You got a collapse of Lehman Brothers. You don't have anything like that here.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, the statute doesn't require that whatsoever for liability. And the statute is written broadly because the legislature wants the Attorney General to go in and stop fraud and illegality.
Counsel, I think you hear underneath all these questions the question of mission creep. has 6312 morphed into something that it was not meant to do? And that's something you must address, because there has to be some limitation on what the Attorney General can do in interfering in these private transactions, as Justice Friedman said, that where people don't claim harm. So what is the limiting principle?
Like, that sounds like a group of people that really don't think Letitia James should be bringing that lawsuit, right? Am I hearing that right? I think I'm hearing that right. So what is she doing bringing that lawsuit? Well, I think we know. I mean, it was politics, politics, politics as usual. Now, apparently, the reason why it's stuck more than 300 days now in the Court of Appeals when it should have been decided and thrown out, frankly, within the first 30 days, and I've tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Have I not, guys? I think I've been pretty generous. I'm like, maybe the justices are struggling because, he's the president and they want to make triply sure that they can throw this thing out. Maybe they want some kind of change to the rules so that a Letitia James or AG like Letitia James can't do this kind of stuff in the future. We've been grasping for answers, right? And the reality is we don't have any. We don't have any, except now maybe we do. Maybe we do. And this is concerning. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, super concerning. I'm going to get to what people are suggesting in just a second. But first, once again, Judge Friedman, who may be retiring soon, sounding really skeptical of all of this. Take a listen.
If you look at what the Deutsche Bank witnesses testified to, Haig said that the financial strength of the guarantor affects the pricing in terms of the loan, and it affects whether the private wealth management group would be allowed to do this deal at all.
Doesn't Mr. Haig testify that there were 14 factors and this was the least important factor?
Well, certainly there are multiple factors that go into the risk assessment, but both for materiality and for disgorgement, the issue is not whether there's only one factor. There's often a lot of factors that are being considered. For materiality, it's whether it's important to the overall total mix of information. And this was absolutely critical to the overall mix of information, not only because they were looking specifically at what the net worth was in order to decide the terms of the loan.
Really? No, I think that actually there's a little something more going on. Because if you look back, this particular article, which was in MSNBC, right as this all happened, right? Because everybody was watching it in real time, and even the headline couldn't avoid it. They said Letitia James's massive Trump civil fraud victory in question after appellate arguments. So we all saw it. And you look at those judges, and those judges clearly had absolutely no use for the case. And yet, so we're still here waiting. It should have taken 30 days, and now it's over 300. Think about that, okay? Think about that, you guys. He has been waiting. This article, which was actually written 2 weeks ago, 293 days. So now you add 14 to that, okay? We're well into territory that we should not be into. And you're talking about a lot of money in this civil fraud judgment that Letitia James decided to pile on with him, even though if you listen to those judges, they think it's all ridiculous. So in September of 2024, guess what? Everybody was like, okay, there's no way this thing is going to last. There's just absolutely no way. And yet here we are still looking at this. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? Okay, well, the concern now, and this came out a few months ago and got lightly reported on, we reported on it here, the New York Post reported on it. There were concerns that Kathy Hochul, who's the governor of New York and was dealing with, this whole fee thing that they're charging in Midtown Manhattan, she wanted the fees and he didn't want the fees. And so there was this whole snafu over all of that. She apparently said to him, and again, this is the White House's accounting of this, and she disputes it, but she said, hey, I control the courts. And so the concern is that Kathy Hochul is effectively sitting there controlling the courts, controlling the judges, or at least controlling one woman in particular. Okay, one woman in particular, and that's the fear. So I'm going to go back to this article for a second. Which again is in the New York Post. They're writing that, and I didn't realize this, so this is important, guys. Any member of a 5-judge panel can place a hold on issuing a decision without having to provide any kind of reason. Wow. Okay, so there's one person that the New York Post is speculating about, and some people have said is very, very beholden to Kathy Hochul. And that one person would be, let me show you, she's actually running the whole shebang. She is the top justice there. Here we go. This is her friend. And this would be Diane, let me make sure I get her. Yeah, Renwick. Okay, the woman on the right, or maybe it would be your left, who is seen as a likely vote to uphold the verdict. She was appointed by Kathy Hochul, and Kathy was like all proud of it because she was the first Black woman to hold that position. And so the suggestion is that this is what's holding things up, because you can have one single judge who says, I'm not going to issue a verdict. And they believe that maybe she is doing this. So White House sources claim that it is Hochul who controls the judges, which she allegedly told President Trump. And because, he was really combative with her on some of that congestion pricing stuff, and on energy issues, wind farms, et cetera, that she was threatening to hold things up, and that she could do so because, she's in tight with one of the justices that she appointed. So that is the concern at this moment. The other concern, I'll just show you here, this also in the New York Post, in the same article, George Friedman, who you may have heard, they're saying, like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? He's actually a Democrat, and he was appointed by Pataki back in 99. And he's actually going to be leaving the bench, it's expected, this year. And so if he leaves the bench, if he's holding the majority, they're saying that perhaps she would try and wait him out, which again is just speaking to such enormous corruption. Like, it's hard to even fathom such enormous corruption. But hey, it's not like this stuff has not happened before. I think people are getting frustrated though. And realistically, like, we deserve answers. We've been waiting here for answers, and it's stuck in appeal. So this might be another one, I think, for Pam Bondi to really spend some time on and to look at, because it should not be taking this long. It just shouldn't be taking this long, and we need some accountability from these judges. I'm sorry, like 300 days. I've been generous. I've been really generous, and I'm tired with it. We deserve answers. He deserves answers, but really, for the sake of the country and frankly the sake of New York, the guy deserves a few answers.